So there's no shortage of amazing builds you can create in Ghost of Yotei, from becoming almost immortal to one-shotting groups of enemies, all the way to creating powerful synergies to take down targets in interesting ways. That's why today we'll take a look at 5 amazing builds you can create right now, so let's jump right in. Also, quick disclaimer, most of this footage has been filmed on either hard or lethal difficulty, so if you're playing on lower difficulties, these builds should be even better at that. And I want to start with the 5th spot, which goes to the Genji Gunslinger build. By the way, just because it's the last spot, it doesn't mean it's the weakest. It's actually absolutely overpowered, and all of this has been filmed on lethal, by the way. But this makes amazing use of both of the match locks in the game, so we get to make use of the pistol. This is great at interrupting enemies, getting the knockback in, insane amounts of damage, and with one of the charms, we can recuperate some of our bullets back when we interrupt targets. Plus, of course, we also get to use that Tanegashima, which is the rifle, especially via concentration slow time. So that's going to be another amazing way of one-shotting targets pretty much back to back. Overall, what we're going to be using here is the Genji Guard armor. This is going to be given to you via Genji's mythic tail over here at Oshima Coast. You can immediately talk to him over at the Benton port after the first mission completed there, which is going to open up the mythic tail on this side of the map, and at the end of it you're going to get the armor. But what this does is it actually gives you 2 very strong bonuses for the region. One is that it makes your rifle reload speed extremely fast. You can get it so quick you're basically breezing through the animation. But it also reduces and even completely blocks incoming projectile damage, which, as you know, it's a big problem in that region. One of the bonuses lets you completely block, deflect all incoming projectiles even when it comes from behind, and another one, if you did get hit, you're just going to get a portion of the damage because you reduce that incoming projectile damage by a massive amount. However, in this case we're going to be using it with the following charm combination, most important of which is going to be the charm of Hachiman. This is going to also be a standoff build, so we're going to extend that streak by another one, which if we fully invest into the standoff skill line, that's going to mean taking down full 5 enemies back to back, including the last one with our pistol. And no, it's not going to take into account the wolf, it's still going to be 5 at the maximum. On top of that, we also add the charm of Tanzutsu Guard. This is going to make interrupting enemy attacks with the pistol have a major chance to regain 1 bullet. So for example, you can see here when I'm doing that against this target, it immediately gives me 1 bullet. So this actually triggers quite often, which means you're going to be topped up on bullets for a very long amount of time. Besides this, we're just going with anything else that helps with melee damage, so charm of Utsunushi for the extra parry windows, charm of Iron Focus, and of course the charm of the Kibutsuhiko. This is going to just let us extend concentration time, especially on headshots. And finally, charm of Generous Opponents gives us quick fire ammo when looting enemies that are downed. In this case, it also works with bullets, by the way, so it helps the pistol even more. If you want to get all of these charms, for the charm of Hachiman, you get it during the Oni quest line. At some shrine, you're going to bow with 2 other characters. For the Tanzutsu Guard, you're just going to buy this from Taro whenever you have it in his inventory. For the charm of Iron Focus, you need to complete the Ainu Hunting Grounds quest here in the Golden Foothills area over at the Yotei Grasslands. For the Kibutsuhiko, you're going to need to climb the Risen Fog Shrine over here at Nayaro Wilds area. And finally, for the Generous Opponents charm, you just need to complete the Clearwater Fox Den, also in the Nayaro Wilds. Now, the reason this is only going to be on the 5th spot is because you're not always going to have that amount of luck to get all of the bullets back, so in this case you're going to fall back onto your katana, which means on the lethal difficulty you may be missing some of the other charms that make katana combat or melee combat a lot better. Which brings us to the 4th spot, and that's going to go to the Fiery Cyclone Kusarigama build. Not only is this amazing at multiple stealth assassinations, but it's one of the best at group clearing entire camps of enemies. Literally, if you get the Kusarigama, an Oni Flame, and also the charm that lets it spread its fire, you can now hit a whole bunch of enemies, and every enemy that gets hit further spreads fire to other targets. As you can see, whole camps of enemies get absolutely deleted in seconds. That's why primarily the main playstyle here is to just group up everybody and take them down in one big AoE sweep. If you want to use stealth, it's still an option. Kusarigama is one of the best at assassinations, and you can also go with the multiple stealth assassinations, further extending with the kunai. Now, as you would expect, we're going to be using the Crimson Kimono armor set if we're going with that pure stealth playstyle. Otherwise, you can go with the Spider Lily if you want more AoE stagger. But in this case, Crimson Kimono just helps a ton with enemy detection, also extends the length of our KhrazeGaming assassinations, and even extends our assassination streak by 2 more kunai throws with this, which means taking down 5 whole enemies in one single go. But even when we're out in the open, we still have the charm options, so here are the most important, especially for the AoE KhrazeGaming. If you're focusing on that, besides getting that Spider Lily armor, you will also want to use Charm of Fire Mastery, which makes all heavy attacks to now further deal more fire damage and even spread it to nearby enemies. And guess what? Your triangle slash cyclone whirlwind attack with KhrazeGaming is basically going to be a heavy attack, meaning that fire gets spread pretty much everywhere. But I've noticed that it doesn't just spread on heavy attacks, it's also getting spread on just performing execution attacks, on using weapon throws. So right now I'm not sure if this is bugged, but it definitely seems to work way better than the tooltip intends it. Also, Charm of Homusubi to further increase the fire damage we deal. I'm also using Charm of Shattering Strike. Since we're gonna destroy shields, it causes a shrapnel explosion from them, which helps a ton with AoE stagger. And besides this, I'm helping out a little bit of that melee slash ability gameplay when we're out of Oni Flames. So in this case, I'm using Charm of Enduring Resolve, which gives us or has a chance to give us 1 spirit back when consuming spirit, so we can use our talents way more often. Also using Charm of Lingering Shadows to further reduce enemies detection. And I've also added the Charm of Unhealthy Resolve here. When we take down enemies, we get quite a lot of resolve back, and I've noticed that the health penalty here is not really quite that big. It's pretty much like 1 or maybe 2 of these hot springs, so you can definitely use it if you need a little bit more ability spam. If you want to find these charms and use them, for the Shattering Strike, you're going to get it from the Soya Port over in Teishio Ridge. For the Fire Mastery Charm, you're going to get it by winning a gambling minigame over at Ishikari Market. For the Homusubi Charm, you're going to need to head over to the Winding Tears Shrine in the Ishikari Plain area. Meanwhile, for the Lingering Shadow, you will just need to complete the High Wall Fox Den over at Teishio Ridge once again. For Charm of Enduring Resolve, you have to complete the Twin Peak Fox Den over in the Ishikari Plain. And for Unhealthy Resolve, you need to complete a side tale called The Face of a Master over at Nayaro Wilds. Now, since we were talking about taking down enemies from afar, there's no other better build than the one coming up at the 3rd spot, and that's going to be our Pure Ranger. Just like back in Tsushima, it seems to function almost exactly the same. So we're going to have instant takedowns, as we can auto-aim up to 3 targets at the same time, instantly taking them down no matter what. Plus, we're going to have a massive amount of concentration, which means slow down time, so that enemies will take a very long time to actually reach us. So in this case, it's going to be amazing at everything that it does. The only problem with it is that it requires a pretty deep investment and commitment into this playstyle, plus it may reach some ammo problems compared to how it was back in Tsushima. So let me show you what we are working with here in terms of the armors and the gear. Obviously, our main armor set is going to be the Dragonfly, which fits this playstyle perfectly. So when we fully draw a bow, it creates a brief blue glint, which is going to massively increase the damage and the range, also empowering your shot. And when you empower a shot, it also gives you a moderate amount of concentration and also increases arrow reload speed by a major amount. However, we're mostly going to use the 3rd perk over here, specifically because we don't need to actually wait for the glint with the longbow, simply because enemies get one-shotted anyway, but you can still use it if you want the range extension. Otherwise, we're just gonna be using all of these charms to further make the arrow gameplay and recuperation even better. So in this case, we're gonna be using Mother's Charm, which increases the damage by a major amount of every single arrow that we shoot. Also Charm of True Aim, which is going to make our longbow to auto aim and lock on up to 3 additional additional targets, which is going to be absolutely crazy. Then we're going to be using the charm of Kibitsuhiko and one of Iron Focus. This just helps with the total concentration time and also extending concentration time when landing hit shots. Plus, I've also added charm of Archer's Fortune, which will just retrieve some of those arrows back, either when we take down enemies or when we miss them. But unfortunately, since we don't have charms of Fortune anymore, like in the previous game, it's not going to be quite as consistent as before. So this means you're not always going to have full bags of ammo. You will need to retrieve them from the environment. But that is why we also get to use the charm of Ameno Wakahiko, which will just make our headshots to gain some extra spirit. So we can actually spam abilities with this build, assuming that anything survives by the time you even need that. Usually, that's not the case. Anyway, in order to find these charms, for the Mother's Charm, you already know you can find it by climbing Mount Yotei. It's going to be from a shrine on the way. For the charm of True Aim, you're going to need to complete the Legend of Opsunupuri, which is going to be a mythic tale over at Nayaro Wilds over here. You have to talk with the same woman NPC that also got you to that location. Also, charm of Kibitsuhiko will be for the Risen Fog Shrine that you have to climb also at Nayaro Wilds. Charm of Archer's Fortune is going to be from the Warm Plains Fox Den in Tokachi Range. Charm of Iron Focus will be from another Ainu Hunting Grounds mission, but this time around in the Golden Foothills area in the Yotei Grasslands. And of course, for the Ameno Wakahiko, you just need to complete the Blooming Ridge Shrine in the Yotei Grasslands on this side of the map. But this brings us closer and closer to the top spots, and to be honest, either of these two could be the #1 spot, but this slightly changes depending on your playstyle and how good you are, especially on the hard or lethal difficulty. So let me show you the second spot and the one that works best on hard, but you do need to have a bit of skill for the lethal difficulty. So that's going to be the Undying Bounty Master one-shot build, and I'm calling it that because it literally works with two of the best armors in the game. One is better at hard or below, one is better on the lethal difficulty. On this one, we're also going to be using the Kanimori's Two-Faced Mask for the extra damage, especially on lethal. Since we're going to be getting one-shotted anyway, it really doesn't matter that we get that debuff. So if you're going with the Bounty Master route, this is going to mainly focus more on getting the perfect parries in. We have a bunch of charms that really extend that time window, so it's going to be a breeze even on lethal difficulty, especially against some of the boss fights that may pose a problem. This is going to help a ton, as there are no other solutions really than using the Bounty Master, especially against taking them and of course their defenses. But also in the open world, we have other options to set them on fire, and overall quite a bit of survivability, but not much unless you're not timing those parries right. Now, if you're going with the Undying Armor version instead, you're going to put this to the hard difficulty so that you can tank multiple shots. You're no longer going to be using the Kanimori's Two-Faced build, but you are going to continue to use pretty much the exact same charm distribution. So let me show you what that charm distribution is. These are the options we have. So especially on lethal, I'm using the Bounty Master armor, since it's going to replace regular parries with powerful perfect parries and perfect dodges that also have those 3 additional counterattacks. Those are really strong against boss follow-ups, so really good to have. Plus you gain some massive bonuses to spirit gains, which I'm also going to be coupling with the Kanimori's Two-Faced Mask that I covered before for the extra damage, since we don't care about the extra damage that enemies deal on us on the already lethal difficulty. We're going to be using the Father's Charm, which is going to make perfect parries to also give us back HP. We're going to use the Charm of Futsumushi, which is going to make these perfect parries and dodges even easier to pull off, further extending that time window. We're going to be using the Charm of Mount Yotei, which is basically Father's Charm but on steroids. This is going to make perfect parries to provide even more healing and a ton of damage reduction. That's why this is going to be great for the hard difficulty. Charm of Bold Deflection, which is going to make our parries to inflict major stagger, very useful against bosses or when overwhelmed. The one of Enduring Resolve we covered before. Since we're gonna be using our abilities, we can actually spam a lot of that with this build, and we want to regain some of that back. So in this case, it has a chance to give us 1 spirit back when we consume it. Also, Charm of Confident Strikes, it gains 1 spirit, so even more on that if we stagger enemies while we have the katana. If you don't use the katana too often, you can use the Charm of Fire Mastery instead of it, which is going to just let our attacks spread the fire. And as you know, fiery weapons are unblockable, so on lethal difficulty this is going to help a ton to like 1-2 shot targets. To get all of these for Father's Charm, you're going to once again find it at the Mount Yotei climbing spot. For the Futsunushi, this is going to be from the Leap Shrine in Tokachi range. Then if you want the Mount Yotei one, you're going to need to complete all of the 5 reliquaries in pretty much all of the 5 regions of the map. For Bold Deflection, you get this from Takezo's Mythic Tale, of course. Enduring Strike is once again from the Twin Path Fox Den in the Shikari Plain. And finally, Confident Strike is going to be something you can purchase from Taro, or you can go with the Charm of Fire Mastery I also covered in the previous builds. Now, if you want the Undying version, the one that has excessive amounts of healing and survivability, but on maximum hard difficulty, since otherwise you get one-shotted anyway. But if you go with max hard difficulty, then swap that armor with the Undying armor and keep the charm distribution exactly the same. So this is going to give you a ton of big bonuses if you align your weapons properly. So if you stagger enemies, you're going to get another HP restoration. You're also going to extend that perfect parry and perfect dodge window without any penalties like the one from the Bounty Master, and another one is that your focus attacks also increase the stagger damage. So overall you're going to get a lot of healings from the stagger. But like I said, this is not going to give you many benefits on lethal difficulty. That is why Bounty Master is the best version for lethal, while this is the best version for hard and below. Which brings us to our top spot right now, and the reason it's the top spot, it's because of how comfortable it is, completely taking any skill issues out of the equation, no matter if it's lethal or any difficulty before that. And that's going to be the Fire/Kunai Shinobi, which, as you might have guessed, it's one of the most overpowered combinations right now in the game, especially on lethal, where you can bypass and destroy defenses with kunais so easily that it's literally going to one-shot enemies even easier, but everything below it works just the same. This is going to mainly use the combination that lets you throw out up to 5 different kunais in 5 different enemies, and every single one of those are set on fire, so kunais will already strong at just destroying enemies' defenses, staggering them instantly. Now they also get to be set on fire, and the damage is going to be great. Now, as you might have guessed, our main armor set over here will be the Ninetales armor, which is the best option, but Spider Lily is another alternative if you want more AoE stagger, some really interesting effects, and want to focus more on the weapon throws instead. But specifically in this case, Ninetale armors provides us a lot of quickfire weapon damage via the first perk. Second perk makes assassinations have a chance to grant us 2 quickfire ammo back, which also includes the kunai in this case, so it helps a lot to keep the ammo count up. And finally, it reduces enemies detection, so this is also another assassination build that can work really great. As far as the charms go, most important will be obviously the charm of Hidden Blades and charm of Burning Blades. This is going to let you throw up to 5 kunais with this, plus maxing out the kunai upgrades, and of course also having the fire damage, so they get ignited and they deal a lot more damage to enemies. That is why besides this, we're using charm of Uncanny Aim, which is going to further increase the damage on our kunai throws, just like any other quickfire weapon. I've also included charm of Generous Opponents so that we have more chances to loot kunai from fallen enemies, not just from assassinations. I've also added charm of Enduring Resolve, which in case we need to spam abilities like a healing and whatnot, when we consume that, we have a chance to regain 1 spirit back, so really useful in combat situations. For the final one, I've used the charm of Defensive Blade, so I have another chance to regain a kunai, but only on perfect dodges. You can definitely replace this though for something else, like for example the one of Homusubi further increases fire damage, so lethal difficulty becomes even easier since it applies to your kunai. But feel free to change it to something else if you want to. And here is how you also get all of these. If you want the Hidden Blades and Burning Blades charm, you just need to complete the winter farms, including the follow-up to clear all of the 5 farms over at Teshio Ridge. So really everybody should have had these by now. The Uncanny Aim, you get this from the Lakeview Fox Den, also add the Yotei Grasslands. Generous Opponent's Charm, you have to complete the Clearwater Fox Den in Nayato Wilds. The Defensive Blade, this is going to be something you can buy from Taro. And that pretty much concludes today's video with some of the best builds in the game. Of course, don't be fooled by the ranking. Literally every single one of these are absolutely top tier. I would say every single one of them is S tier plus, so you can go ahead and use any of them. It's just that depending on the playstyle or how much comfort you want during the highest settings, you may want to favor one or the other. But totally let me know down below in the comments which one is actually your favorite, or if you have any other combination that is equally or even more OP. This is pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.